Most all of the master of ceremonies work, which includes the explaining and the justification of some of the music and some of the new compositions, has always really been in my particular category, or my job, so to speak, until this next gentleman came along. Actually, he's very well qualified, much more so than I, to explain his music. So because the next composition is his and came about through his particular inventiveness, I think it only fair that I say, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like you to meet Bill Russo.
Thank you. This composition is an attempt to blend the Afro-Cuban music with which many of our attempts have been identified with American jazz. There's been no attempt to utilize legitimate Afro-Cuban rhythms. We've merely tried to get the flavor of Afro-Cuban music and at the same time play it in our own particular way. The composition was originally copyrighted as Cuban Sound Piece Number 1, and then for a while we called it Cuban Night, and finally it was decided that the best title for it would be the geographical location of Cuba, and consequently it is now known as 23 degrees north, 82 degrees west. Because of a particular trombone figure, which is somewhat characteristic of it, we in the band often refer to it as the March of the Five Spanish Elephants. I think it might be a good idea to give you somewhat of a profile of our orchestra, at the same time show you how this composition was constructed. The basic trombone figure is stated by two of the trombones, and you might enjoy hearing it by itself. Okay. This figure continues, and against it we have another figure played by the bass trombone and the bass violin. This figure added to the other figure also continues. Then two more trombones come in with a third figure. For the time being, there'll be a ringer playing my part. And this again continues. To it, we add maracas. And after that, we have claves. After all these instruments have begun playing, the most important instrument to the rhythmic sound of this type of composition comes in, and we hear the drums. Play the little thing. Go on. And after that, we have a bongo sound played by the guitarist on the guitar. After all these instruments have begun and we get the pot boiling, so to speak, we add the saxophones playing the main theme. And then after a while, the main theme is repeated and the remaining trumpets play a counter theme to it. Then there's a short ensemble, and you'll get to hear the wonderful trombone of Frank Rosalino. After that, there's a scream. Thank you. After that, there's a scream ensemble, and there's some alto saxophone playing by Lee Konitz. When Lee finishes playing, the trombones come back with a development of the original theme, and the individual sections pick up the original trombone figure. The very ending of the composition consists of a development of the basic rhythmic figure played by the entire orchestra, and by that time we expect the top of the ceiling to start vibrating somewhat. I think since I had a couple of minutes here and I forgot to do what I really came up here to do, I might as well go ahead. You see, one of the main advantages of being asked to present a composition is that it enables me to get a much-needed cigarette. And you have no idea what hardship is involved in just sitting there for 45 minutes to a couple of hours and not being able to smoke. Now, the only trouble is that I forgot to do this earlier, so if you'll bear with me. If you'll bear with me, I'm just going to stall for a few minutes. I think this would be a good opportunity to go into something that I've wanted to say for a long time, and that is... Am I boring you fellas? Okay, well, thank you. One of the things I wanted to go into for a long time, and that is to tell everybody possible how wonderful it is to be working on this orchestra, and for one particular reason above and beyond everything else, and that is the financial aspects of it. I think that people are going to think we're somewhat materialistic, but actually the reason that all of us are so happy to be making as much money as we are is not so much the money in itself, but the freedom that it gives us artistically. There are other musicians and writers and painters who've had to live in stuffy garrets, eking out some type of sustenance with the aid of a piece of cheese and some stale wine. But we on this band have the privilege, first of all, of seeing a lot of the country in a very luxurious manner by new streamlined cars. And the other thing about the money is that we're allowed to sustain our families at home in the best possible conditions. Most of us have at least one home. There are some who have somewhat polygamous tendencies who maintain homes on either end of the continent so that there aren't such great traveling expenses. But it's also nice to know that when you get someplace that you'll have a brand new car that you can step into and that all your bills are paid off and you have no dealings with mercenary merchants who are trying to collect their bills and so on and so forth. And you have no idea how I'm enjoying this. The main thing about it is that we have a sense of security. We know that if at any time we leave the band, we have enough money put away so that we just have completely no worries of any kind. And this, I should say, is perhaps the most wonderful thing that can ever happen to a musician, because most musicians suffer along on $185 a week and have to wear old clothes and ill-fitting uniforms and things like that. But those problems don't give us any... Stan, did you want to say something? Oh, you have to wind me up.
Well, Bill, now that you've exposed the economic function of this group and you've enlightened the audience as to this composition and you've had your cigarette, we'd like very much to play 23 degrees north, 82 degrees west.